just what it sounds like. It is a place where the weather pattern is blocked from moving, and so the weather stays stagnant for several days and sometimes even up to a couple weeks. If we think of the atmosphere as a river of air flowing over the Earth's surface, a block is like a place where a big rock stands in the river. The normal flow of water stops and has to move around the block. Obviously, in the atmosphere, there are no rocks, but conditions can develop that stop the normal west to east flow of the river in the mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, which act much like that rock. The flow will move to the north or south, or sometimes both, of the block area. But where the block happens, a persistent weather pattern develops. Blocking patterns were first described in detail in a couple of papers from the early 1950s by Dr. Daniel Rex, for whom one of the types of blocks gets its name. In fact, that's the block we've been experiencing over the last week. Why do blocks matter? Well, blocks matter because they often lead to extreme weather events. If you're under the high pressure in a blocking situation, drought conditions can quickly develop, as you can go for days with full sun and no chance of precipitation. If, on the other hand, you find yourself under a low pressure system in a block pattern, it can rain for days at a time, leading to flooding conditions. Also, blocking patterns are important because they are complicated for forecasters. How exactly and where precisely a blocking pattern develops can be difficult to determine more than a couple of days out, and also how exactly it breaks up and what happens when it does is also often difficult to predict. This has much to do with the weak stirring currents that cause the block in the first place. Finally, blocking patterns can sometimes repeat themselves, so that you'll find a block sets up for a week, then breaks down, but then reappears in almost the same spot a couple weeks later. These repeated blocks exacerbate drought and flooding conditions. Types of blocks. There are 5 common types of blocking patterns. The first is an omega block, named after the Greek letter omega because the pattern looks like the Greek letter omega. The second is a Rex block, which happens when a high pressure ridge is to the north of a cutoff low pressure system. The third type of block happens when there is split flow of the jet stream. The fourth type occurs when there is a cutoff high pressure system. And the final type happens when there is a cutoff low pressure system. This past week, the weather over the eastern third of the United States has been dominated by a classic Rex block. As you can see from the week's upper level flow patterns, low pressure cut off from the main flow on Sunday. It has then spent all week spinning under an increasingly strong ridge. This has made for warm and dry weather for the northeastern United States, while areas in the eastern Carolinas and mid-Atlantic have gotten lots of rain. As is typical of cutoff situations, the low-pressure system eventually starts to weaken as it no longer has a thermal gradient to support it. Without a thermal gradient, the lift in the atmosphere starts to diminish, and the rain becomes more showery in nature. By this weekend, the pattern will shift, and the remnant low will get dragged into the wider pattern. What is interesting about this block is that it is the second time this has happened in the past month. In the second half of May, a very similar Rex block set up over the eastern U.S. Both of these pattern blocks have greatly contributed to the very dry conditions over northern New England. We will have to wait and see if the pattern repeats itself a third time, as the overall conditions make a third reoccurrence possible. This has been another Weather Guy Explains video. Thank you for watching, and if you want to support these videos and the forecasts I provide for the West River Valley of southern Vermont, you can do so by becoming a patron, following the link below. You can also follow me on Facebook to get my live forecasts on Monday mornings at 7 a.m. for the work week ahead, and published at 6 p.m. on Thursdays for my patrons for the upcoming weekend. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel for videos like this and visit my webpage for the latest forecasts and recent weather information. Thank you to my patrons for making these videos.